Bonjour, ici Ray Zahab. Bienvenue à Pas sorti de bois.
Mesdames, messieurs, votre gagnant du 110
Si tu commences à te sentir bien en courant un ultramarathon, fais-toi-en pas, ça va passer.
Grand champion du 125 km.
C'est la Minute NAC et aujourd'hui j'ai le goût de vous parler des gaufres de NAC. C'est pas la première fois que j'en parle, mais j'en suis pas encore revenu depuis qu'ils sont arrivés avec ça sur le marché. Pour vrai, le goût est exceptionnel. J'en prends dans mes courses, j'en prends dans mes entraînements et j'en prends au quotidien juste parce qu'ils sont bonnes au goût. Puis bon, ça rend un peu addictif parce qu'ils sont vraiment très bonnes. Mais les gaufres Ultra Énergie, c'est pas juste des bons goûts. C'est surtout des gaufres qui ont tout ce qu'il faut pour vous soutenir dans vos longues sorties, vos longs entraînements, vos longues courses. Il y a 3 grammes de protéines, 200 mg d'électrolytes, tout ça pour 140 calories. Et surtout, ils sont faits à base de plantes, ils n'ont pas d'huile de palme et sont sans OGM. Et bien sûr, question de changer de goût parce qu'on le sait, dans une longue course, dans un long entraînement, maintenant on veut changer le mal de place. Là, on a 4 saveurs. Dès que c'est sorti ces gaufres-là, il y avait vanille puis caramel salé. Mais là, avec le temps, on a rajouté sirop d'érable et chocolat. Je peux pas vous dire laquelle est ma préférée. Pour vrai, c'est exceptionnel. Tu alternes tout ça ensemble, tu mixes les 4 à travers ta longue course puis tu es parti pour la gloire. Vous le savez, pour essayer ça, vous allez sur le nacbar.com, vous remplissez votre panier avec les gaufres NAC et tout le reste de l'Ultra Énergie. Et ensuite, si c'est votre premier achat, vous avez 15% de rabais grâce au code promo pas sorti du bois, PASSORTIDUBOIS. Bon magasinage et bon épisode.
On n'est pas sorti du bois, hein?
Bonjour tout le monde, bienvenue à ce 140e épisode de Pas sorti du bois. Aujourd'hui, je resterai pas seul longtemps parce que hier, le dimanche 5 mars, je faisais un Facebook Live avec Ray Zahab, un gars que j'ai reçu au podcast à 2 reprises. Un gars qui, oui, est une légende de l'ultramarathon. C'est un anglophone, un Québécois qui vit en Outaouais. Chaque fois que je l'ai reçu, c'est les fois où j'ai fait des exceptions et où on a fait des entrevues en anglais. Moi, je me dis, c'est un podcast francophone, Pas sorti du bois, ça va pas changer, mais là, on parle d'un Québécois qui a accompli de grandes choses, un anglo-québécois, mais un Québécois quand même, puis je pense qu'on a beaucoup à apprendre. C'est un gars qui est extrêmement impliqué dans la communauté, c'est un coach, c'est le coach d'Eliott Cardin, d'Emmanuel Salambo de Guara, c'est un gars qui, avec sa compagnie Capic 1, fait des expéditions, amène des gens en expédition, mais aussi fait du café. Puis cette compagnie de café-là est devenue partenaire avec, oui, le podcast Pas sorti du bois, mais aussi avec plein d'athlètes de trail. Donc, c'est un gars qui est extrêmement impliqué avec sa fondation Impossible to Possible. Il amène des jeunes en expédition. Il fait vivre ses expéditions de l'intérieur à des jeunes. Bref, un gars impliqué sur tous les fronts. Ça fait 2 ans qu'il est à Arigana à servir du café dans le village au bas du Mont-Grand-Fond. Puis, il revient tout juste d'une grande expédition en Arctique, mais surtout, depuis que je l'ai reçu en septembre dernier, justement à Arikana, Ray a été diagnostiqué avec une rare forme de cancer du sang. Puis on plonge là-dedans parce que Ray a décidé, comme il fait toujours, de tourner ça en positif, d'utiliser le défi qu'il est en train de vivre pour tourner ça en positif, inspirer les gens, puis encore là, repousser ses limites. Donc, il se lance à travers ses traitements de chimiothérapie dans des expéditions. C'est assez fou ce qu'il fait. Donc, j'étais certain que ça allait faire un bon épisode. Puis on a fait ça en mode questions-réponses en Facebook Live. Donc, en amont de l'épisode, sur les médias sociaux, j'ai recueilli des questions pour Ray. Et il y avait des gens qui étaient en Facebook Live, qui nous écoutaient, qui dans les commentaires ont posé des questions à Ray. Donc, ça donne vraiment un épisode qui est le fun. On plonge avec Ray Zahab dans ses expéditions, ses apprentissages, les leçons qu'il tire, la vie familiale, comment le fait d'être un papa, un mari contribue à ses expéditions, aux grandes choses qu'il accomplit. Donc, un épisode que moi, j'ai trouvé vraiment le fun à enregistrer. Jaser avec Ray, c'est toujours inspirant. Tu as le goût de te sortir un calepin puis de prendre des notes parce qu'il y a des choses qu'il dit que tu dis, faut pas, j'oublie ça. Un gars avec beaucoup d'expérience, puis c'est le fun qu'il puisse le partager. Donc, voilà, je vous laisse entre les mains de Ray Zahab et des questions du public, de l'audience qui était là, toujours aussi pertinentes. Merci tout le monde. Bon épisode.
The reality is it's a confidence thing, right? Because I can actually, if you ask some of my friends, if you were to ask Yannick or any of these guys, I mean, I can speak French. I just don't speak it beautifully, but I can get by, especially if like coffee's involved or, food, asking for food. I mean, Do you know what I mean? Like I'm learning, and you learn by just doing, I think. Is the key,
Exactly. And
right?
there's
Yeah.
this, I think that being shy adds to that anxiety of trying to go. I remember when I was in Cégep, so like 18, 19 years old, a friend of mine was saying, I speak better English when I had a couple of drinks. And it's not the alcohol that gets you speaking a second language better. It's just the fact that you're not shy anymore. Like you don't
Yeah.
have that social wall or that social thing that makes you doubting, oh, I might say it the wrong way. Hey, we don't
Right.
care. It's your second language. Like just assume it, go for it, go with it. And I mean, I think there's this shy portion that just stops you.
Oh, right on, dude. I couldn't agree more. I totally agree with you. I think that it's all about the confidence.
Yeah,
If
exactly.
we're, we go on all these trips. You and I, we were recording the last time at UTHC,
Yeah.
right? And when we're in La Malbaie or anything like that, nobody knows you, right? So you're just walking around and you're just talking French and all the shops and everything else, and it's like it's working, and you're not afraid, because no. Anyhow, so there you
Yeah.
go.
So we
But
have
learning. I'm
e-
learning every day a little more.
exactly. We have
Yeah.
Patricia in the chat. We have Nick Gelina. Bonsoir à vous deux. Merci d'être là. There's already 20 people showing up. I mean, it's a Sunday night.
Awesome.
We don't know. Like I said previously before we started, the plan is to do it live just for the fun of it. And then because I usually talk to my guests when we do a Zoom interview before going and starting recording, I say, hey, it's not live. So whatever happens, we can stop, we
Yeah.
can stumble on a word. I'll just do the post-production and make sure everything's great. But now we are live for real. And the plan is that tomorrow, like on Monday, I will share it as a regular episode so people can listen to the our live together. We'll have a lot of questions, I'm sure, because I see Yannick Fournier is in the chat. Two legends, let's go. Hey,
Yannick.
Yannick is
Yannick's
the
the
third
man.
one.
Yannick is like he's the best looking man in ultra running, probably is what
I
I think.
think so.
Yannick,
I think
he's
I
like
agree.
he's got the George Clooney swagger. He sent me a photo today. Everybody go to Yannick's Instagram, and there's a photo of him running, and it's like he came out of an espresso ad, like a George Clooney espresso. He's running down the trail, and he's got his sweet potato mixture that we work on for him. And the guy's got these swagger times 1,000.
Yeah, and I mean, the
Crazy.
last time we spoke together, we recorded, but not the last time we spoke, but the last time we spoke on a microphone together for the podcast was at the Arikana, and Yannick showed up during the episode. I remember we had him talking a little bit, and there's rumors that Yannick and a special guest with us could come on the podcast at some point
Ooh,
in the next
excellent.
couple of months. Yannick knows I'm putting pressure on him. I'm kidding, Yannick, but at some point, I think that guy's history, there's that guy's story. There's something there that will be nice to tell at some point. But no pressure, Yannick. You just for now,
he's got
just
an
take
amazing story.
everything this Ray just told about you and how your swag and how you look good running.
Get him to tell you on the show. Like, get him to explain to all the listeners what he does for a living. It's crazy.
Yeah,
Crazy.
well,
I don't want to be a spoiler, but you gotta that's just like it's just wicked.
yeah, the day he'll come on the podcast, I think it will be my second question after what are you drinking, and then what's your job? Because last week I think he was running in Dubai.
Yeah.
So I
He
mean,
was in Dubai. He's in Vegas. He's all over the place. So he's pretty interesting cat.
yeah, I mean it's a subject for next time. It's a teaser for the future. But Ray, it's so good to speak with you. We speak a lot of time, but on a microphone, it's the third time. Every time you came on the podcast, I always say it's a French podcast, and we make one exception, and it's for my friend Ray Zahab. Every time people write to me after the podcast, oh, great episode, even though it's in English, we don't care. It's great thing to hear. I think you inspire people. People like to hear about your stories and what great thing you do in whether it's the hot deserts or cold Arctics. But ever since we spoke last September, a lot have been going on for you. You're a busy man. Every fall, I guess, for you is a busy season, and every winter is a busy season. But a lot have happened since then. Do you want to speak a little bit about that fall and what you lived? with the
Yeah, well,
experience?
I mean, there's the elephant in the room, right? As they say, which, is obviously, I've been in chemotherapy since so I knew I had this form of blood cancer. It's a rare form of lymphoma. I knew I had it when I saw you when we were, away, but the doctor at UTHC, but the doctors had not sort of zeroed in on exactly what it was or what the type of blood cancer it was, and also the type of treatment that I was going to be doing. So since that point, I was away. I saw you UTHC. Then I guided a group of clients across Baffin Island, and with Québécois. And then I was immediately into chemotherapy. And so every 25 days since that time, since October, I've been doing 2 days of a combination of monoclonal and chemotherapy. So I go 2 days on, 25 days off, 2 days on. That's basically my cycle. And I won't kid you, it's terrible. I mean, the chemotherapy, I mean, I guess it's different for everybody. Makes me feel horrible. Like, it just destroys me. But on the upside, after about a week of feeling horrible, a week to 10 days, I start to climb out again, and then I start feeling good. And I'll be honest with you, right before I go back in again, I feel better than I felt probably in the last 2 years. So if you take into consideration, especially the last year I've been a mess. So I crossed Death Valley at its widest point in July this past summer, right? From California all the way through to Nevada, while having this cancer, and felt horrible the whole time and just thought maybe I was overtired. Previous to that, I was up on Ellesmere. Previous to that, expedition after expedition. And all the while, I have this thing inside me. So now, while I'm being treated, although the treatment is a killer, when I'm 7 to 10 days out from the treatment, I start to feel really good. And I'm like, shit, maybe I'm going to feel really good, like spectacular when this is all over, right? So, in between these treatments, I have basically 10 days where I feel good. Like 10 days I feel great. And then I go back in and then it's all lost.
Yeah.
So in that 10 days blocks that I've been doing, feeling good for the last 5-6 months, I've been doing different things in those 10 days. So I was guiding in the Atacama Desert in Chile with a group of clients with Québécois. I was in Austin at the running show, which you and I talked about, with Nick from Norda and Adam from Norda. I was on my own expedition in the Arctic, which I know we're going to talk about soon, on a compressed schedule. So the reality of my life has been it's a cycle.
Yeah.
And every month I just get my ass out of bed and start training, even though I don't feel like training. And I get moving, even though I have the crazy metallic taste in my mouth all the time and I feel sick. And I get moving, and then things start to improve, and I go and I do my shit and I get it done. And then I go back in, and I got one more to go. I just finished one 8 days ago. And then I'm heading to Death Valley with my daughter into the Mojave Desert to do some scouting for some future projects. And then I'm going to come back, and I got the last rounds of chemo, and then it's the process. So anyhow, I know that was a really long answer, but that's kind of what I've been doing the last 5 months.
What form of cancer is it?
It's lymphoma. So it's there's a million kinds of blood cancers, right? So I have a really rare form of lymphoma that attacks your body's ability to create healthy cells in abundance. And so therefore my red blood cells were super duper low, like anemic. And then my blood viscosity, which is the, essentially the amount of protein, the thickness of your blood, the amount of protein, was jacked. And can be quite dangerous. And it's also makes you feel like garbage all the time.
Which explains why you felt like shit the past couple of the last year while you didn't know. And I mean,
horrible.
You've been training hard
training hard.
Yeah.
And just thinking, hey, something's not right, but just kind of just not worrying about it. Right.
Yeah.
Just pushing through it, which, in retrospect, I mean, there's two sides to look at that, right? I mean, you can look at it as, well, I wish I would have found out sooner, or I did a hell of a lot of shit in the last 2 years, it all worked out. So, I mean, you can look at it that way too, right?
Yeah. Before we dive into this latest Arctic expedition, we have a lot of people live if you have questions, because I mean, I advertised it as a Q&A. We'll take questions. Well, Ray will take questions. So feel free to write them in the chat. I will see them. And at some point during the conversation, I will throw them at Ray. That's why he's here. So n'hésitez pas si vous avez des questions. Pitchez-nous ça dans les commentaires, français, anglais, on s'en fout, je vais traduire s'il faut, mais Ray est là pour répondre à vos questions, puis on en a reçu plusieurs au cours des derniers jours, parce que j'avais annoncé que Ray venait sur le podcast, dans une séance de questions-réponses, mais vous êtes là, puis moi j'ai annoncé ça comme étant une séance de questions-réponses en Facebook Live, donc je vais donner priorité à ce que vous posez, donc n'hésitez pas à nous remplir le chat de questions pour Ray. Ray, you just came back from Arctic. You just mentioned it. You've been on 25 days cycle between chemo. Within these two treatments, you went into the Arctic, and explain me what was the plan for that latest expedition.
Well, the plan a year ago when I put it together, actually the plan's been 15 years in the making with Inuit friends of mine from that region of the Arctic that have been telling me about this valley. And as you know, Yannick, I love being in the Arctic in the middle of winter, like January, February. That's my sweet spot. Or I love being in the deserts in the middle of summer, right? Like just say it's if anybody has the time and you feel like going and checking out my website, you'll be like, wait a sec, this guy's always in the desert when it seems to be the middle of summer, and he's always seems to be in these Arctic-y cold places in the middle of winter. Because I just love being in those places at that time of year, just the way it feels and the sky looks and everything else, right? So the expedition originally was going to take me 25 days to go from the island of Kikiktarjuak through leaving south essentially across the sea ice from the island of Kikiktarjuak and going south and meandering my way over to Baffin Island through a series of fjords, then crossing Baffin Island through a valley called the Palak Valley, at which time I would start recording temperature. So you're basically in one of the coldest places on Earth at the coldest time of year. And the idea was to collect temperature data and weather data along the entire transect of Baffin Island through this area, in the same way that I did this past summer when I was crossing Death Valley in the middle of summer, at the hottest time of year, hottest place on Earth, hottest time of year. We took an entire data set transecting Death Valley. And then we were going to combine these two data sets for a future Impossible to Possible youth expedition, which I can tell you about if there's time later on, one that's happening in June. So at any rate, that was the goal with this expedition. And then I got cancer, right? So I'm like, okay, well, I'm not going to be able to do that because I can't be away for 25 days because it's physically impossible to get from, back in the chemo treatments. But I wasn't going to let that stop me. And I've sort of been living this reality where for the last 5 or 6 months, instead of saying, well, I'm not going to do anything, I've learned from my expeditions and from doing these things that sometimes you just have to adapt, right? You just got to adapt to your current situation. It's like, all right, well, here's the reality. I get the chemo and then I feel like shit and I'm basically dangerously toxic for like a week, right? Can't do anything for a week. All right, so that week's out. Then I got to get back in time to prepare for the chemo to make sure I'm back in time, no flight delays, etc., and to recover. So like, what's my block? And I said, well, I got 10 days. So what am I going to do in those 10 days? How much of this project can I still do in 10 days? So I talked to my buddies up in the Arctic, and I was talking to my teammates that were going with me, Val Gagné, who's collaborates with me with Québécois on our expeditions and was an Impossible Possible Youth Ambassador. And I said, hey, what do you think? Can we do this? And we'll mix it up and we'll do snow machines for part of it and we'll ski and trek the other parts. We'll just do this whole mishmash, but it'll be this crazy, amazing adventure crossing this region of Baffin Island that I've never been to. And we'll do it in the middle of winter and get it done in 10 days. And everybody was like, yeah, let's go for it. And so that's in a nutshell what we did, and we were successful. But dude, what a crazy adventure. I mean, it was insane. So we were successful in getting that weather data, and we were getting average daily temperatures. And this is like with an accurate device that we have to calculate the weather, humidity, and wind speeds. I think at one point we had minus 51. Humidity at 65%. And I don't like the cold. I'm not fussy about the cold. I dress for the cold. I like being in the Arctic in winter, but I don't necessarily like the cold that much, right? And I couldn't risk getting any frostbite because if I get frostbite, which again, if anybody wants to reference, just scroll through the pages of my Instagram, you'll see me with plenty of frostbite over the years. But I couldn't take any chances because frostbite equals infection. I have no immune system right now. So, like, I mean, what am I going to do? Die of frostbite? I mean, that would be ridiculous, right? So I had to be super careful. Well, you take 65% humidity, you tack on 100 km/h winds at -50, it feels close to -100. That's insane, So dealing with the weather was one thing, but there was all the other stuff that went with that you can imagine.
And I read somewhere that it was your 9th crossing of the Baffin Island. Was it
Actually my 11th?
11? So the data on your
counting. Who's counting? Yeah.
So
The 11th crossing. Yeah.
Compared to the previous time you've been there, was it different in some way this time of year, this time in 2023?
Well, I would say it was the most rewarding because to me personally, the fact that, there's a part of you that doubts that you're going to be able to do something like this. I mean, I'm going through this whole friggin' cancer thing, right? And so there was part of me that doubted was I going to be sick? Was I going to catch something before I went? Like, I mean, I can get a cold so easy, right? So was I going to catch something and not be able to do it? I mean, was I going to be satisfied with this whole modified approach? But I'll be honest with you, I was super proud I even got on the plane. Just the fact that I got on the plane and I was confident enough and I found that in myself to go and do that and mitigate risk as best I could when I was out there, accomplish my goal, and then get home in time, just in time to go back in for chemo a few days later. I was proud of myself that I got it done. So of all these crossings of Baffin, and I've done Arctic expeditions all over the world's Arctic and Antarctica, and so, but this one just felt a little different, if you know what I mean. Like, it wasn't the most difficult Arctic expedition I've done or expedition I've done. I've done many that were more physically difficult. But if you were to say from the whole life perspective of doing something, this was very special because it taught me all the things that I say all the time, that is in each and every one of us is the capacity to exceed what we think we can do. Like, we set limits on ourselves and we're constantly resetting those limits if we choose to. And this was a time when, for myself personally, instead of choosing to not go and to give in to my circumstances, I said, no, I'm going to do this as risk adversely as I possibly can, but I'm going to get it done.
Wow. There's a question. There's a couple of questions in the chat already, but there's one question that I received from Anne-Marie, and I think it's a super segue to just what you mentioned. She asks, what was the reaction of your medical team when you explained your profession and your expedition plans and the fact that you were going to continue during your chemotherapy treatment? How have doctors been allies to you? And she mentioned, being a doctor herself, I am interested in knowing how we as a medical professional can support athletes when illness strikes them without warning.
Well, I'll be honest with you. Both of my doctors I say both. The doctor that diagnosed me, the hematologist that diagnosed me, she is a runner. And her husband, who's also a doctor, is runner and an ultra runner. They follow the expeditions that I do. So when I went in to first get my diagnosis, they were very well aware of what it is that I do. My treating physician is an amazing guy. Like, he's a mountain biker. He's an outdoors person. He gets it completely. And I would have to say, it's like winning the lottery of doctors. Both of my doctors have been amazing. Like I said, the diagnosing doctor, and now my treating doctor, the treating physician. I don't know what the correct terminology is, but anyhow, he's a rad dude, and he gives parameters, and I follow those parameters. And there's contingencies and there's things I should do. Like, I mean, when I get feeling funky, he says, hey man, you got to back off, so I listen to what they say. Like, if they said to me, hey, no, forget it, then I wouldn't go, but I'm very fortunate that with the type of blood cancer that I have, although it was quite debilitating before I started treatment, now I'm responding to the treatment really well. So in that sweet spot of those 10 days that I have each month, I feel good enough. They do my blood work. My blood work looks good. I go. And that's, but I always listen to what they say.
Yeah. I think we haven't mentioned it because we spoke every 2 weeks. I don't know. So you've mentioned it to me, but I think it's important to say to people that things are going well. Like you're responding well to the treatment. Do you have more news to share on that matter?
Yeah. So, I mean, I've got one more. Like, I mean, I had 6 of 2 days each. So I don't know if you would call that 12 rounds of total chemotherapy. And I have the last 2 days are at the end of March. And then I'm hoping that's it. Now, what I have is not curable, right? So eventually it's coming back. Like, there's no doubt about that. But if I can get 2 good years, 5 good years before having to do treatment again, dude, full throttle all the way. It's like full throttle. Take the duct tape, put it on the throttle of the motocross bike, and keep it duct taped on full. I
love
do everything
it.
I can in that amount of time, right? So the way I figure it is like I've been saying to my buddies is that before when I went up to the Arctic, I felt great when I went to the Arctic. I really did. I felt recovered. I felt well trained in that time period that I had, and it's just required a lot of planning. It's been a challenge getting through, to go to the Arctic. I didn't normally, like you and I, we would train. You when you went and did your race in the States, you trained, you followed your program, you went and did the race, and then you came back. Well, right now it's like I had to train between chemo block 3 and 4, and then I'm off for this period of time when I'm sick and everything. And then between chemo block 4 and 5, in those 10 days instead of training, I'm in the Arctic. So I just I assume that the training that I did in the previous block is going to have me ready for the expedition, and it did, right? So there's like this process. But yes, my body's responding well. I feel so good that I can't, when I start butting up to that next chemo, I feel so good that I'm hoping that, in the next, when it's done, in March, I'm hoping, that it'll just, when I get 2 months out from chemo, that I'll feel really good. That's what I'm hoping.
And speaking of full throttle, I'll bring a first question from the chat. Amanda asked, where in the world have you not been that you would like to do an expedition?
Ooh, yeah, that's a tough one. So I tried to count because I'm writing another book right now. So I've done close to 35 expeditions, right? And I've been on almost every continent. I haven't been to Australia. And the place and I've crossed most of the large deserts on the planet at this point on foot, which sounds like the most random thing to say, but I've crossed, and I've done many of the Arctic expeditions that I really wanted to do. I got a couple of projects that I still want to do. There's places I've been already that I will go back to. That's for sure. But there's parts of the Amazon jungle that I had projects planned for going into the pandemic. I was going to do a really big project in the Amazon, and it got sidelined because of the pandemic, and I wasn't able to do it. And then things changed geopolitically in many of the countries that I was going to be in. So, that's still on the horizon though, for sure. That's one. I've been to the Amazon in various regions many times, but to do something collectively, including areas that I haven't been, is like be a dream.
Great question, Amanda. Thank you.
Thanks, Amanda.
I want to add a question to that because we've mentioned full throttle. We've mentioned where would you like to do another expedition and stuff. You've been an ultra runner for almost like 25 years, the beginning of the 2000s, I think. And you've won major races. You've had great performances doing ultras, whether it was multi-day Marathon des Sables, whether it was Arctic ultras, 100 milers and more in Yukon. Do you plan on at some point putting a bib back on?
No, and you know why? It's interesting. The expedition pre-chemo, pre all this cancer stuff, I would spend a year basically training for one thing, and I would put all my chips into that one thing. So when Stefano Gregoretti and I crossed the Namib Desert, that was 1,850 kilometers right before the pandemic, in the middle of summer, very difficult, tricky navigation, 2 years of planning and mapping and everything else, and then actually doing the expedition and training and preparing. So I've got this sort of head game that I go through where I'll do smaller projects during the year to tune me up, and then one really big one there where I'm like all in on it, right? And it's for me, I don't want to take any chances. I just want to just put all my effort and all my mind into that. But I love being connected to that world of ultra running. And so my wife, Kathy, she races, she does the 200 milers. I love crewing her. I've crewed many of the races since I stopped doing races and was focused completely on expeditions. That's since 2007 with the Running the Sahara project. I find ways to get back to ultra marathons and volunteer. Being at UTHC, love being there. Love being at Bromont Ultra with Jill. I mean, who doesn't love Jill, right? I mean, I love being at these races. I love, coaching people like Yannick and Emma, or seeing Elliot. I mean, seriously, coaching Elliot Cardin. Let me tell you something. I get his training reports back. I'll give him a set of workouts, and then he'll send me the workouts back. The speeds at which the guy's running, I'm like, I'm so glad I don't race anymore. I mean, how do you run that fast? Like, it's not physically possible. And I have to question, are you sure you weren't like in a car when you did that workout? Because I mean, that's a ridiculous pace. So the game has changed completely. But what I love about ultra running, the game has changed for me, is what I meant to say, to complete that thought completely. But what I love about it is still having a foot in it, living vicariously through people that I'm helping out that are racing, or by volunteering at races or crewing. So, I get a lot out of that. I don't necessarily, and my daughters, of course, they race biathlon, Nordic ski racing, sprint kayak, sprint canoe, and I think they may do some trail racing this year. We'll see, So
from people following you on Instagram, I mean, your wife is an achieved ultra runner. You are too. And when I saw a couple of videos that you shared in story of your daughters running in the technical terrain at some high speed, I said, oh, okay, yeah, we'll see some others they have putting on beat and killing it.
They're crazy on the technical descents. They're like little Elliots on the descents. It's crazy. They just, so it's funny with side story. So UTHC, right? Memorial, which many of the listeners know it well, right? They know it from UTHC. And I mean, people that have gone hiking there. We've done that, the Boucle de Morio, like the whole loop there. We've done that with the kids a few times, fast packing. And, we've done it in a day, the 30K loop in the day. And they'll descend the technical stuff. I mean, I can't keep up with them, so forget it, right? They're too fast technical descenders now. And I was always a pretty decent descender. But the speed at which the runners are descending that, like you see it on the video when they do, they post videos from it, and it looks kind of fast. But if anybody knows, like, it's crazy, right? And so I see it in my daughters. They're running, they have the ability to run like that style, like this new way of descending, which is just, it's an insane pace to descend and style of technical running. So they have that, and I listen, we put no pressure on them. They do the sports they want to do. They love being outside. I mean, they're sprint kayakers and sprint canoers. My wife and I can't keep the boat upright. Like, I mean, it flips if we get. So they choose the sports they want to do. If they want a trail race, then that'd be awesome. I think they do really well.
We have a question from Yannick, and you mentioned this earlier about writing book. He asks, "You will be writing a new book at some point?"
It's a planted question for sure, because he knows, because we talk like every single day. So yes, I'm writing another book. I've written a couple of books, and then the last one I wrote was in 2000. I think it was around 2011, and it was geared towards younger people. And it was basically the first book that I wrote, rewritten for younger people. Plus, I tacked on a few stories from expeditions. But I'll be honest with you, I never felt like I deserved it. Like, I mean, if I'm going to write a book, I really want to make it, like, I want to have something to say, I guess, but also I wanted to live an experience so that I would feel like, for me personally, that if I was going to write something again, that it would hopefully have meaning to someone else than just myself, right?
Yeah.
So now I'm at that point, right? And I have been for some time. I've been working on it for some time. So yeah, so it should come out, and it'll probably take a year,
Interesting. We'll look for that. Over the years, you've done a lot of expeditions, and I want to ask you, does your goals have changed? Like earlier, was it more about pushing your limits and doing crazy things that people have never done. And then we saw you getting involved with Impossible to Possible, the foundation that you actually founded, and doing expeditions to inspire and educate. And does the focus and the motivations to do these expeditions change over the years?
Yeah, it's a really great question. I'll be honest with you. When I started Impossible to Possible, so that was in 2008. So I just started doing expeditions in 2007 with the Running the Sahara expedition. And simultaneous, it's been, I do my expeditions. I am, supported by my partners and sponsors. And that's how I'm able to fund Impossible to Possible. So everything we do with Impossible to Possible is 100% free, and we're all volunteers. So the students go on the youth expeditions. They don't pay. The teachers don't pay to come along with us to help out, or any of the volunteers. So they sort of happen together. I do an expedition, and then later in the year, we do an Impossible to Possible youth expedition. That was the normal operating procedure until the pandemic. Then we had a 3-year hiatus, basically, right? And then coming out of the pandemic, we did one small adventure during the pandemic, actually in the Laurentian Mountains with a group of youth. Now, we're planning our next big youth expedition, so we're getting back into it. My goal on my expeditions, it's a little mix of what you said. I mean, yeah, for sure. Like, there was something exciting about crossing the Atacama Desert when it had never been crossed north to south, right? Or doing things like crossing the Gobi Desert or whatever, any one of these Arctic projects I've done. Pushing ourselves, going to the South Pole and we broke the world record, whatever. Those things were all important, but every one of those expeditions, I connected those expeditions to classrooms. That's never changed for me. So since the Running the Sahara project, which for the people that are watching that have no clue what I'm talking about, and I don't blame you, I ran with 2 friends of mine 7,500 kilometers across the Sahara Desert in 2006, 2007, and it was made into a documentary film. And the purpose of that documentary film was to raise awareness for the water crisis in North Africa. But it became a huge learning tool for schools. And I learned that an adventure can be a powerful teaching tool. And so I've been using all of my expeditions since then to communicate in real time with students when I'm on my expeditions. And at the same time, as you said, that thrilling, challenging part of being in a place where perhaps no one's been or very few people have been in an extreme time of year, for sure, there's a thrill to that. But to answer your question is what's changed for me over the years, and especially now where I am in my life right now, what I've learned is being in the experience, being in the moment from a personal perspective is as valuable as anything else that I'm doing on the expedition, right? So like when you went and did your race down in the States, the result was amazing. You had an amazing result, but the result at the end of the day pales in comparison to the experience that you had, the friends you made, the people you met, etc. It's like that for me as well on an expedition. And so now I'm very focused on those things when I'm out there,
Yeah. Yeah, and I think it's not everyone that can go on and cross a desert like you do. Like, I think everyone can achieve great things, but while doing it, just talking about the technicalities of it, it doesn't inspire much, or it will inspire a couple of people that are really into these technical details. But I don't know, taking a step back, looking at the macro stuff, looking at what you've achieved, but what the relations you've created with the local people, with the people in the expedition, the problems that happen and how you solved it. This is all things that can educate younger people or people in general, but that can also be applied and transposed into real life problems, or what you live in an expedition or what we live in an ultra are things that we live in life in some other way. So seeing how you've went over problems and how you solved them and talking about it and doing conference about it and talking to youth about it, it changes people's life.
Well, I appreciate that. But, for me, and this from the events that you do or the impact that the podcast has, you and I have talked about that a lot. How many people the podcast reach, people that hear the stories, and they'll find that one thing in there that they connect to. My mission with my expeditions is to reach out to youth. I've had, this has happened before. I'll be on a youth expedition somewhere, and we'll all be sitting around a campfire or whatever. And I'll be talking to these youth ambassadors, and I'll say, well, so they're 16, right? They're 16, 17, 18, these kids. I said, well, how'd you guys find out about Impossible Impossible? Because I'm always curious, right? And I've had kids on those expeditions say to me, you were doing an expedition somewhere, and I was in elementary school or grade school, and I saw the pictures that you were posting or the videos that you guys were making, and I knew I wanted to do that someday. And lo and behold, 10 years later, they apply for a youth expedition. It makes you feel really old because now all of a sudden, I mean, their life, they've aged. It's crazy since you did that expedition. But at any rate, and then, but the exciting part is that they found their way to Impossible Impossible, and then they're on an expedition doing exactly what it is that I do, just a shorter format,
Yeah, it's a full circle.
It totally is. And so that's my mission, is to impact these kids as best I can from doing the projects that I do. But for people that are following along, if it's not a student and someone is following, what I want people to know is that people can do extraordinary things. We're very good, at underestimating ourselves. Mm-hmm. We're experts at it. It's what we do. I mean, if I'm sure many of your listeners can say and remember a time when they thought, well, what's the point even trying doing something like that? Whatever it is in your life. We all get those doubts, right? And so we'll talk ourselves out of doing things instead of talking ourselves into doing things, right? And I learned when I changed my life at 30 years of age, and my prior life, I was an unhealthy guy, and now I'm doing what I do. I can remember what it was like to think that the glass was mostly empty. And now, as the saying goes, the glass is overflowing. Just because I'm going through this physical, this health issue right now has not changed my perspective one bit on life at all. That, we have one life. We have one chance to do something amazing in our lives, no matter what it is. And there's no measuring stick for what's amazing. You're not going to get your measuring stick looking at social media. On social media, you're going to see a bunch of stuff that's just not realistic or real is what you're going to see. But in looking into your own life and saying, I'd like to run 5K. Well, then do it. If you do your first mile, I want to run a 50 miler. Well, then run a 50 miler. You're going to laugh because I've said this sort of, but it's 90% mental. The other 10% is all in your head. I've said that. I believe it. It's a mental game, right? And so what I try to hope to show people is that, I'm running across the desert when it's 55 degrees Celsius and I'm, navigating and finding my way and sometimes getting lost and whatever else is going to happen, sometimes alone out that I've done many solo expeditions. But the reward comes in the fact that I committed and I took a risk and I took a chance to do something. And in that process of challenging ourselves, we learn extraordinary things about ourselves, no matter what size the challenge is.
Yeah. And I think everyone that listens to the podcast, everyone that are doing challenges, whether it's a first 5K or first 50 miler or whatever your challenge, whatever your ultra is, it creates discussion around us because our sport within our community, we all know what you're talking about. Oh, you've been running a 50K. Oh, we'll do a 50 miler, blah, blah, blah. And it's within our small community of ultra runners or trail runners, but it's a small community. When you go outside, you speak with your colleagues and your family and people around you that are not in that community. What we do seems crazy, whether it's a 10K up Mont Saint-Anne during Québec Mega Trail or a 100 miler. And people are curious, but people are also inspired, not because of the distance. They don't know what it is, what it means to run that long, whatever the distance is, but you're testing your limits. You're going through a process. You're preparing for it, and people are curious about it, and it inspires whatever it can inspire people. Whether it's people, going out for a run for the first time, but we all within our circle, our social circle, we all inspire with what we do and talking about it, and not to people to copy us and do the exact same crazy stuff that we do, just to go out the door and try some new stuff. Whether it's a first walk up in the woods, you hear about a colleague doing trail run, well, I might as well go and walk in the wood for the first time. These things happen, these stories exist, and I think that what you do is the exact same thing. You inspire people, and these people are inspired, so they start doing stuff that might inspire, and it's a full circle. It's a pyramid of inspiring people, and I think these things are important in our society.
Oh, I couldn't agree more. I think that it's underestimated how important that, first of all, as I go playing on what I was saying before, people underestimate what they're capable of doing in the first place, right? And I mean, pretty much everybody has a certain amount of self-doubt or has gone through a rough period in their life or whatever. But when they see someone else, like you just said, doing something, they don't necessarily have to do exactly the same thing. They just have to find a change or a shift or something positive in their life to start that process, and being happy and being satisfied in one's life is a process. It doesn't just happen overnight. I suppose it could, I mean, you could win the lottery and win $1 million and maybe that makes you happy for a few days. Maybe it doesn't. I don't know. But most people, 99% of us, have to work at being happy, right? And happiness, a lot of it is derived from purpose, and purpose comes with passion, right? So when you find what you love to do, or you find maybe it's the ultra running, and maybe it isn't, but when you find that purpose and that passion, basically you've won the lottery, right? In life. And then you're able to go and do these things. So, I think pretty much anyone's capable of anything that they set their minds to, that's a belief that I've had for a really long time, especially within ultra running. We're just seeing the tip of the iceberg right now in what's to come in ultra running. There's probably dozens of undiscovered Courtneys. There's dozens of undiscovered Killians, maybe hundreds. We don't know, right? Because maybe these kids aren't running, or these people aren't running, or they can't afford to run, or they don't live in a place where they can run, but they've got that engine, right? So, I mean, the sport will grow as people's minds open from the sport specifically. But opportunity, giving young people an opportunity to discover the outdoors. We've had, just as an example of what I'm trying to say, and I'm not doing it very eloquently, forgive me, but, Sandy Nypaver, who's a big time ultra runner, she had come through Impossible to Possible. And we've had, oh, goodness gracious, Ryan Montgomery, Kelsey Hogan. I know I'm missing a bunch of them, but Emma, there's a bunch of these young people that didn't necessarily discover ultra running. They were probably going to become ultra runners anyhow, but they fell in love with the outdoors, perhaps, right? On one of these youth expeditions, and saw in themselves the capacity to do something extraordinary, and then that would lead to even crazier, bigger stuff. So it starts with a kernel. It starts with a seed. And once somebody takes that first step, big things can happen. But it's the willingness to take the first step.
Yeah, exactly. Patricia Bouchard has a great question. I would like to know what expedition was the hardest and why.
Thank you, Patricia. Well, you know what? I actually, funny enough, so during this chemo, when I'm in the chemo haze, like when I'm 2 days basically just laying around after chemo doing nothing, I just lay on my couch and I'm looking at my phone. It's probably the worst thing for me. But anyhow, I'll end up posting stuff from past expeditions. And I did a few chemos ago, I did my top 10 most difficult expeditions. And I had people messaging me, during saying, oh, I know it, I've been following your stuff. I know what you're going to say is the toughest. And many people predicted that it would be the Sahara, 7,500K across the Sahara, 111 days. And it wasn't. The most difficult thing I've done was when I ran north to south through the Atacama Desert. It was 1,200 kilometers, not the longest. Took me 19 or 20 days. It wasn't the biggest mileage that I've done daily, but oh my God, it was relentlessly like Death Valley hot every day. I had a constant headwind with salt and sand in it. There's a giant hole in the ozone, so I was being burned to a crisp. It was the middle of summer, and I had layers of clothing on to protect me from the sunburns because that hole in the ozone. So the UV rays were terrible, and the navigation was insanely difficult through parts of that desert. Everything looked the same and the terrain was just horrible. My body was chewed up. My skin was chewed up. I was a mess. And I was on minimal resupplies. So I was getting a resupply anywhere between 30 and 50K. I was getting resupplies of water. So I was carrying a heavy pack and everything else. But I've done many unsupported. I did an unsupported expedition from the island of Qikiqtarjuaq, where I just was. I ran self-contained from Qikiqtarjuaq across the sea ice, then across Baffin Island to Pangnam in January when it's still dark out. Insanely cold, and I was put in big days. So there's no snow at that time of year. So the ice going up the fjord, so I was about 110K of sea ice. And when I hit Baffin Island, that last 20 kilometers or so, the winds are so strong coming off of Baffin Island into that fjord that it blows sand and rocks into the ice. So my sled that I'm running with, trying to do 50K a day, I'm pulling it across these rocks and stuff, and I was pulling it on a beach. Is basically what it ended up being like, right? And of course, minus a million. It felt like my face was frostbitten. But I've done many difficult trips over the years. But I would think that the Atacama, from the hot perspective, was the most difficult thing I've done.
Jose Martineau asks, what is your best strength to go through all these expeditions?
Well, it's a strength that I try to work on constantly, and that's humility. So my greatest asset is studying my entire life, a study in trying to be as humble in the way that I approach these things as I possibly can. I don't know everything. I'm not the best. I'm not the fastest. I'm not the fittest, and I'm not the smartest, but I'm damn good at learning. And so the more I stay humble in everything I do, the greater the achievement can be, because then I keep my mind open and I'm willing to learn. My buddies up in the Northeastern Arctic will tell me that for years people would go out there and thought they knew the land. And they would say, well, this, that, the polar bear's this, the polar bear's that. And my buddies would be like, all right, whatever. And then eventually people would find that they don't know shit, right? So it's keeping your mind open to learn from others and to learn from the environment that you're in and study the environment that you're in. So Arctic expeditions, for example, I don't know how many I've done. Kamchatka, Siberia, number of times. As you mentioned, Baffin Island now 11 times. Different parts of the Canadian Arctic. Every single time I go, I learn something. I don't have it figured out. The minute I have it figured out, that's it. The game is over, right?
Yeah.
So my greatest asset is trying to remain humble in order to keep my mind open to learn.
And Jose asks, how many people have been out with Impossible to Possible up to now?
We've done, I know I'm going to get this wrong, it's either 15 or 16 youth expeditions. We've had over 70 youth ambassadors. We've done youth expeditions to Tunisia, Peruvian Amazon, Brazilian Amazon, Rajasthan, Botswana, the Canadian Arctic, Utah, Northern California. The list goes on and on and on. We've had, as part of the school program that's connected to each of the youth expeditions, hundreds of thousands of students connected over the years. We've live streamed into hundreds of classrooms from these expeditions, and we've covered off on a multitude of educational subjects on these Impossible to Possible youth expeditions, ranging from biodiversity, scarcity of water, access to healthcare, ecosystem services, etc. So lots of stuff.
Yes, that's the thing. There's the young people going on these expeditions, but there's also those at home or at school, in that case, that are learning from that and are getting inspired from that and are educating themselves with what you guys are doing up where you are. I have a great question that came twice from two people that's been on the podcast. I think you know them. Nicolas Dan, great buddy.
Okay.
He did a couple of lives with me here. And Joanie Desroches. They both asked the same question at two different times, but they asked, what is your mantra? And Joanie added, is there a sentence that you repeat yourself when things are not going well in those expeditions?
Oh, that's such a great question. I mean, I think that every expedition that I'm on, because the circumstances and the set of circumstances and parameters are so unique, there's typically something that will enter my mind that will become the mantra while I'm on the expedition. I don't have one key phrase that I would use every single expedition, but I'm highly motivated by food. So I mean, if I'm, on an unsupported expedition and I start out in the morning, I'm already thinking by the time I get dragging that sled across the Arctic, I can't wait to set up camp and start eating again. Same thing goes if I'm on a desert expedition and it's supported. You're way into a calorie deficit on these desert expeditions because you're going super light. I don't eat barely anything during the days. I'm doing 70 to 90K a day, whatever I can get in, depending on the navigation, how tricky it is. And it's off-road, right? So you're not moving very quickly. So I get motivated by the food of what might be at camp that night. But I'm motivated especially by the fact that at some point on my expedition, because I have the satellite gear with me, whether I'm unsupported or supported, I will be connecting with students. And I know that many of these classrooms have followed me previously, right? So they know what's coming and I know them. There's a rapport. So it's very motivating for me to know that I'm going to get to connect to a classroom and their reaction to the places that I'm in is amazing. Henceforth, hitting a desert in the southern hemisphere, February is the middle of summer, any one of these southern hemisphere deserts, and you're able to hold your phone up and show perhaps what a sunset looks like or sunrise. It's mind-boggling the colors that come out in that heat. So I'm really, rather than having sort of a mantra, it's more like knowing that I'm going to be talking to these kids that super stokes me,
It must be fun to hear their questions because I don't know if you saw that, but I hosted 4 episodes with young people, like young runners between, I think was between 6 and 14 years old. And they have a clear vision of stuff. And there's funny questions coming and funny reflection, but there's always something really, really interesting with how they think and how they react to whatever story you're telling them. You must have had funny and super interesting thoughts and questions from you over the years. You have one in mind that you remember or something, a reaction to what you were explaining to them at some point?
Well, they always want to know, especially on the cold expeditions, how you go to the bathroom. I mean, that's always that's the common, the $1 million question is how do you
Getting
go
back to basics.
Like, what are you, crazy? Like, how do you go? And I tell you, on this latest expedition, when we were stuck in our tent at one point for 40 hours in a windstorm. So literally, I'm not exaggerating, the feels like the wind chill temperature was close to minus 100. It was crazy cold, right? Minus 50. And then you can look at any wind chart online and you can do the math. So minus 50 with 100-kilometer-an-hour wind. It's very cold. And so you gotta go to the bathroom. You gotta go to the bathroom. There's no choice. The minute you exit that tent, anything that's exposed is freezing. So it's all about angles. It's a game of angles to try and block the wind, right? It's crazy. Anyhow, that's what they want to know. They want to know all about that stuff.
And mostly. I mean, nobody asked these questions in the chat or in the previous the last couple of days when I asked questions, and I think that's a fair question. That's a
fair question.
I mean, we've been talking about planning these expeditions and stuff. I mean, with ultra runners or with you on the podcast, we've talked about nutrition, but that's a part of expeditions and ultras that you have to figure out also.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It's interesting, to sort of connect the dots here back to ultra running from expedition. With an expedition, there is, in training for the expedition, there's a well thought out plan that eventually gets you to the expedition. Then on the expedition, to achieve the expedition, there is a series of phases that have to happen in a certain sequence in order for things to go right. And things can go sideways, but if they go sideways, typically you have a B plan, and the B plan accounts for that sideways, right? With ultra running and with any of the runners, for example, that I'm working with, and I would say this to any of the runners that are following your podcast and they're preparing for this year, for their upcoming events this summer, is to have that plan in place now to get you to the start of your event, but also to think in terms of when the event is happening. How exactly do you want that event to play out? You don't just train, run a lot, and then show up, right? I mean, it might work, right? But you're better off thinking about exactly how you want to execute that race while you're in it. How do you want that race to play out? And exactly what's going to be your strategy going into it. It's a huge part of the way that I do my expeditions. And I try to share that with young people when they ask the question, you know, how do you get these things done? Well, that's pretty much my answer that I just gave you. But also with people as it relates to ultra running, like with Elliot, for example, or with Yannick or anybody else that I'm helping out, that is a key piece that we look at. What's the long-term plan? And what's that goal in that short term of the race, right?
Yeah. And I think something that we don't prepare enough, and I mean, I haven't counted, but I've been doing that it's my 5th season doing ultras this year. Something that I began to do maybe 2 years ago, where after doing a couple of ultras and learning from mistakes, is already planning what can happen that is not planned, that is bad for my race, and what's the plan? What are my options? Because you know that it's a possibility that food won't get in, that you have a minor injury. No, if you have a serious injury, you stop. It's the right thing to do. But minor injury, or your legs are cramping, or your crew doesn't show up at the place they should be, or your drop bag is lost. There's many options. And I mean, it's not about having a scenario for everything, but it's still thinking about what can I do if it happened? If I think I will see my crew at Les Hautes-Gorges during the Arikana 125, you have 65K in, 60 to go, and your crew has, a flat tire, they don't show up. Does your race ends there? No.
Right.
But what's your option? And thinking about it, you can plan for 100 different scenarios, and that's another one that will happen. But still thinking about, you know yourself as a runner, you know at some point that you have your weaknesses, you know that sometimes digestion doesn't go well. Well, think about the plan and just having a couple of options right away that you have thought before the race, just going in. And if it doesn't happen, that's great. But if it does happen, you're not starting from a blank page. You already have options. You say, okay, I planned for that. I knew that at some point, maybe my stomach will go south and I can't take any food in. What works? Okay, I can drink a couple of a glass of cola. Okay, it goes well. Well, I'll go to the next aid station and see how things goes this way. But if you plan for the couple of bad scenario that can happen, it's still bad during the race. But at least you know what to do, or you have a blueprint. Like you have a couple of options, and then you can adapt it to it. But you don't start from a blank page. So that's a thing that we should talk more, and that people should think when they plan on bigger challenges. Plan for the thing that then goes bad.
Absolutely. And I think also, being in tune with oneself and knowing your body, like being able to know instinctively what your breathing rate is, or your heart rate is, or how you're feeling when you're climbing, and knowing how many gears do you have left when you're climbing. Are you in 5th gear already, or do you have another gear? It's knowing how much you can push and how much you can let off. Yeah. And that's a process that takes time. It became sort of it's funny. Elliot talked about the nose breathing at some point. I think it was maybe on this podcast. And then all of a sudden I was getting a lot of questions from people about it. But at the end of the day, obviously there's the physical benefits and the health benefits of that, but it's just one tool in the toolbox that we utilize so that he, such a great runner, can learn even more about himself, right? Yeah. And the great thing, the really good thing, we're on the Elliot conversation, what's so great about Elliot is you will not meet a more humble ultra runner at his level, like his level to an ability of running. Anybody can walk up to the guy, hey man, how's it going? And he's always got his hand out to talk to everybody. Because that mentality that he has, he's able to learn and absorb things around him, right?
Yeah.
And so I think that applies to everybody. I'd mentioned it before that I feel like it's the asset that I try to work on the most in my life. But I think that that's something else for people, like just take as much information in as you can and find what works for you,
Exactly. Good question from Luc. What was the turning point that led you to extreme expedition, and what is your greatest source of motivation?
Turning point for me, like starting point for me, which was also my turning point, was just realizing that I was no longer satisfied with the life I was living. I was, close to 30, pretty unhealthy guy, smoking a pack a day, that kind of thing, and just getting nothing out of life and not really doing anything, didn't have a career, didn't have any university degree, anything like that. I just had no passion in my life. And I have a younger brother who's an amazing ice climber and mountain biker, and he got me into these outdoor sports. He got me into climbing and adventure racing and mountain biking. And that introduction to the outdoors, those first few times, I've told the story before, the first time he took me ice climbing and he had me on top rope, and I'll never forget it. It was a long time ago. But I'm trying to climb this ice, and my arms are flailing, and my legs were like wet noodles. I had no muscles. Like I was like bone and then body fat and skin. Like I could barely hold the ice axes right above my head. But when I got to the top of this waterfall with him pulling most of the way, and I don't know, I was maybe 100 feet up, 30 meters, and I got to the top and I looked down. It dawned on me that this is what it would feel like to climb Mount Everest.
Yeah.
That things are relative. Those great things are relative. And I thought, well, if this is my Mount Everest, what does the rest of my life? What's the possibility? That was the turning point, right? Like that was the 180-degree shift in my mind that human potential is what we set it at, And I thought, wow, I've underestimated myself physically, mentally, emotionally for the first 30 years of my life. I'm not going to do that ever again. And I just, ebbs and flows, good days and bad, but I just kept on pushing my personal limits after that. And that's how it started.
And what is your greatest source of motivation?
Well, I would have to say now it changes. It changes constantly, but I would say my greatest source of motivation now is my daughters. There's no doubt about it. Just seeing them, from when they were babies, my wife and I, and you're about to experience this, my wife and I would have them in a little baby carrier and we would go hiking or skiing, and, they're 3 years apart. And so we'd have the one in the baby carrier and the other one was just to the point where she was scrambling around on the rocks and falling down. And they remember one time, my younger one, when she was 3.5, where we live on single track trails, right? And so my wife was gone somewhere, I don't know, working out on a trip or something. And my older daughter was on a play date or something. And I'm out with my younger one and we're running. We run on these back trails. Well, they're 3 years old. They hook their toes on every rock and root. And she goes down and she gets back up again. And she has like this huge purple welt right on her forehead, right? And I'm thinking, oh my God, I wasn't thinking concussion. I was thinking, I'm going to get in so much shit when I get home because my wife is going to see this purple knot on my daughter's forehead. And I had her out trail running on this crazy trail, right? She had this huge, horrible wipe. Anyhow, fast forward to now, and they are such amazing athletes, and they're confident in the sports that they do, and they love the things that they do. Whether they're competing or not, I don't care. It's the fact that they have 10 times the confidence to go and do things that I had when I was their age. And so I see them and I'm very motivated and inspired by them. And so when I go and do things, I often think about how they approach things with abandon. They just get into it. They just get into it and do it, right? Whereas I didn't do that for 30 years of my life. And I'm like, wow, they do it so naturally. So it's very inspiring to me.
And you mentioned it very quickly at the beginning of our conversation, but you'll be going on an expedition this week for March break with one of your daughters. Is that right?
Yeah, so we're gonna, less of an expedition, more of an adventure. We're heading down to the Mojave Desert. We're gonna be doing some scouting. So my youngest daughter's 12, and she was at a biathlon race today. And I was joking on social media. We're gonna go from skis to sand very quickly. She got her Nordis. She got her RZ Nordis, and I got my RZ Nordis. She got hers, and hers are like this big, and mine are like this big. And it's super cute. And so we're gonna go down and do some running and some scouting for future projects in the Mojave Desert for both myself and for clients later on in the year with Québécois. So that's the other thing that I'm doing, obviously, is, we connected on that Québécois coffee. We've got the Québécois coffee. And, we do the Québécois expeditions. And that's where I take people like you and I on expeditions to different parts of the world. And a portion of the proceeds from those expeditions go back to support Impossible to Possible. And we have an Impossible to Possible youth expedition happening in Nunavut this June. So it's really great that it's starting to come full circle. So my youngest daughter is going to go help me scout out a route for a future Québécois, which will impact a youth expedition. It's great.
That's the dream.
Yeah, for sure.
There's a good question. Yeah. Good question from Luc. What are your suggestions for guiding children into athletic endeavors?
That is a really good question. It's a question that I get a lot from a lot of people. And actually, look, there was an article that I was part of, I think it was in the Outdoor Journal a few years ago about this. But what we found as parents worked for us is having a steadfast rule that there are no bad days in the wilderness. I mean, that's just how it's kind of got to go. So I can remember many days we get to the trailhead and it's raining or it's really buggy and the kids don't want to go. We get on the trail and there starts to be tears. It's normal. And then I'd be like, you know what, guys? We don't need to do this. Let's just go back to the house and play with Barbies all day. I mean, I could care less, let's just have some fun. And so it's de-escalating any stress when we're in the outdoors, trying to always, it's not always going to be perfect, but always trying to have good experiences whenever possible. And if the game isn't on that day and they're just not feeling it, we just don't go. And when Kathy and I, my wife and I, decided to sort of take that approach with them when they were younger, we feel that it made a big difference in their love for the outdoors, because we never got to a point where they were really sick of it. Maybe during the pandemic, because we were just constantly doing stuff, they got sick of it, when everybody was in lockdown. But for the most part, that's worked for us. So it's like letting your kids discover things on their terms and, and not expecting them to go out and do a 10K run the first time. Like, you get out and you hike 500 meters. That's it. It's great. Done,
Speaking of climbing, there's a question I have, because you've been doing a lot of expeditions. You mentioned it, deserts during the warm season, crossing island in the North Pole and Arctics. But have you done like major mountain project, mountaineering?
I have not. I've done a lot of, mountaineering by virtue of doing the expeditions that I do. I mean, my wife and I were up Kilimanjaro when we got married. I've been through the Andes. I've crossed the Andes numerous times and been up to as high as 17,000 feet in the Andes. Climbed volcanoes, stuff like that. But as a rule, no, I haven't. I'll be honest with you, I'm fascinated by it. I have a friend who recently I had coffee with, and she climbed K2 and Broad Peak without oxygen. And I think that is really impressive, because there's a set of logistics and circumstances that go along with that. Like, there's the whole vertical aspect of it, that the technical aspect, but also the physical aspect. I find it's very compelling. It's super interesting, and I love to watch it, and see it. But no, I haven't done anything like any 8,000 meter peaks or anything like that.
Okay, interesting. You mentioned your wife a couple of times, and I think that's something that people don't know that much, but she's a really, really great ultra runner. Like, she's done some 200 milers and she's a great runner. Can you speak more about her experience and how you can crew and help her during those events?
Yeah, so for sure. I mean, you know what? My daughters are really good ultra runners because of her genetics. I think it's really because it's got nothing to do with me. So she loves these 200-mile races. She's not on social media. She's not on Instagram. She has a Facebook, never uses it. She's on LinkedIn, and that's about it. She's super busy with her work. She works 2 different jobs, and they're both heavy duty. So she travels with her work and stuff. So training for her is very difficult. But she's fascinated by the 200-mile races. And so it's like becomes this annual thing. She'll pick one of these races or whatever, and then she'll go do it. And then we all get together and our friends go down and we crew her and we make kind of a party out of it. And she's done really well. She was second at the Moab 240 one year. She did really well at Bigfoot as well. And so she's been really doing Candace's races the last number of years. And so I don't know what she has on tap next. But yeah, she's amazing runner. So yeah, getting out running with her is not necessarily a lot of fun every single time.
So you mentioned coaching. You coach Emma, you coach Yannick, you coach Elliot. Since when are you a coach for ultra runners?
Well, interestingly, I was a coach for ultra runners. That was my job.
Oh, yeah?
Until I ran across the Sahara. So around 2008, when Impossible to Possible really started to pick up steam, I realized that I was going to have to spend a lot of time volunteering in Impossible to Possible. We were actually doing 2 youth expeditions a year at that point. And so I had to find other ways of making an income on top of doing my own expeditions that I wasn't able to dedicate the amount of time that I needed. At that point, I was training probably online 50 clients a month for running, triathlon, ski racing, etc. And so I had to dial things way, way back. And, I do a lot of corporate speaking, and I've done some work with television and stuff like that in order to pay the bills and be able to spend the time volunteering with Impossible to Possible, and now growing Québécois and, making that business hopefully someday to a point where I can take an income from there. But at any rate, Impossible to Possible, I'm a volunteer. So, you got to figure out a way to carry your family. So I started doing more of the corporate speaking, and I kind of left the coaching behind, and then over the years, I retained a few clients, few people that I would be helping out. And just because I love that aspect of it. I love the contributing in some way, And so now, there's so many great coaches out there. Some of them are really close friends of mine. They're amazing coaches. And so I've decided that, you know what, I have time to coach a few people. And so every year I try to find a few folks that I really want to work with and see if they're interested, and then hopefully help them achieve what their goals are, And so I do it because I love it. I don't do it. It's not my business, Do
it for passion.
Yeah.
I have a really interesting question because it throws us on a different subject that we haven't talked yet. But I've been talking about Québécois, the coffee, for many episodes now, because you guys are the official coffee partner of Pas sorti du bois. And Lorenzo asked a really, really good question: filter or espresso?
Oof, espresso all the way.
All
the way. And multiple espressos, not just one espresso. Espresso after espresso, right? But filter in the morning is great. When you wake up, it's nice to have a filter coffee in the morning.
Yeah.
There's no real bad way to make coffee, but I'll say this to everybody that's listening. The most critical piece in coffee is water temperature and grind. Yeah. It's how you grind your coffee, and it's the water temperature that you use that you're going to find extracts the oils and the flavors from the coffee the best way possible. So whether you're doing AeroPress, or you're doing pour over, or you're doing espresso machine, or you're doing, there's a million ways to make coffee. Probably the hardest way to make it well is with a mocha pot, Yeah. You screw the thing on the bottom.
Yeah.
That it is very difficult. People typically burn their coffee doing it that way. And that's a science to make the coffee that way. So I don't have time for that, so I don't bother with that. I either do in the morning, I do pour over or AeroPress, and then I do espressos in the afternoon. But I have a really good grinder. So invest your money in a really good grinder and in a kettle that can tell you the temperature.
Yeah. I have a good anecdote about you because the first time we talked was way before you came on as a guest on the podcast, was way before Québécois was a partner of the podcast. But at some point, I think it's François Boucher, who contacted me about, hey, you want to try our coffee with the podcast? You could try it. I know sometimes you don't have beer because it's in the morning, so you could try some coffee. And then I think he said, or maybe you said, hey, Ray will talk to you about coffee. And I said, okay, yeah, I know Ray Zahab from Reputation. I know the guy. And then you call me and we spoke about coffee for like 30 minutes. And then you said, oh, you never tried an AeroPress? I'll send you one. And then you explained me about what temperature the coffee. So, I mean, I love it, that anecdote, because it shows your passion with everything, every project you have. It was the pandemic. You guys started a coffee business out of the Québecois expedition company to, I guess, sustain during the pandemic. You mentioned this during our first episode together, but you call me and you explain me the science of coffee. And I felt, okay, that guy's amazing. I mean, if he can speak about coffee for 30 minutes, just imagine if I get him on the podcast and we can talk about expeditions. This will be a great episode.
Well, I remember that phone call. I hope you're still using that AeroPress.
Totally.
AeroPress is make your coffee, and it's like super duper easy, right?
Yeah.
But you know what? Coffee is like life. It's very simple but complicated at the same time. It really is. And the more you invest in the coffee and in the way you make the coffee, the better the coffee is, like your life, right? So that's why coffee, is such a great thing. It's a metaphor for life.
Exactly. There was a question from, I don't have it right here, from Dan about Bad Beaver Ultra.
Oh yeah.
You created that event. What's your story with the Bad Beaver Ultra?
We had some great ultras. We had a series of ultra marathons in Gatineau Park. We had the Black Fly Ultra, which was at Camp Fortune. And it was either 6 hour, 12 hour, and I think we had a 24 hour at one point. And you would run loops on a 6 kilometer course, climbing and descending. Super technical. I mean, we had the runners going up and down the Quebec Cup downhill run, right, for the mountain bikes. So it was like super crazy. Then we had a stage race, which was the Bad Beaver. So it was 3 days, 150K through Gatineau Park, catered by Les Fougères. I mean, the food was amazing. It was a great experience. And then we had the Midnight Moose Ultra, which was a 5-point. We had 5 ITRA points, 5 UTMB points at that race for the 100-miler. And we had runners come from all over the world to get those points because the race was in September, right? So everybody wanted the points. So it was amazing. And we had an amazing run, and then the pandemic hit. And we realized that starting back up again, wow, did the landscape change. Insurance was way more expensive, harder to get permits. Everything became so difficult to do. And we knew what our break-even point was. And the amount of time that each of us, my partners and I, would need to invest in the race series just really made it difficult because each of us has different things going on in our lives. My daughters, they race almost every weekend in the summer with the spring kayak. So, I mean, you can't just not show up, right? So the amount of time that goes into organizing a race, when I go to UTHC and I see Seb and Marilyn and their team, or Gilles with Broma or QMT, any of these races, I personally know from experience how much energy and time they spend in those races to make them what they are. Like, we show up at these races and everything looks easy, so let's go. It's the planning that goes in is crazy to doing one of these events and making them seem seamless, right? And so the bandwidth just wasn't there, so we decided that we had to close shop and we just couldn't do it anymore, Yeah. And maybe someday, but not now.
Yeah. And if it looks easy, if those events go smoothly, that's because there's a lot of planning and there's a lot of work
Oh yeah.
behind it. So it's a tough job for them because organizing events, if it goes well, people don't like bother thinking, oh, that event went super well, it was well organized. No, people think, oh, we had a lot of fun. If it goes bad, now people will point fingers at the organization. It has flaws, but it's a tough business.
It's a very tough business, and it takes years off your life, because I mean, when you see Marilyn on the Thursday at the racer check-in at UTHC, and then you see her again on Monday. Well, she hasn't slept, right? I mean, nobody's sleeping. It's ridiculous, right? So these ultras are very difficult to organize, but and maybe someday.
Yeah, I think we'll go with a last question from Jose.
Okay.
She sent a question. She asked, what was your involvement with Exact Nutrition, and is it still going?
Exact Nutrition.
Yeah.
Hell yeah. Where's those bars? So you know what? There's going to be an Exact Nutrition and Québécois giveaway on this podcast today.
Are we giving away right now?
We're going to give away. So now, but you're going to do the choosing. Like, you pick out, because I can't see any of the names or anything on the, because I'm not, anyhow, I don't know how that, but so you've got to pick out, we'll pick 2 people, and those people will receive a prize package from Exact Nutrition and from Québécois. We'll get some coffee out to some people.
Okay.
So Exact Nutrition, they make these bars. They make these protein bars, and listen, I know the guys at NAC, I know the guys at Exact Nutrition. In Quebec, we are so lucky to have these 2 amazing companies. And Bricks,
imagine
as well.
We have Bricks, NAC, and Exact. We have like the triple crown of nutrition companies in Quebec.
And all 3 of them are awesome, right?
Yeah.
I know, I've known, and I know all 3, owners. All of them are awesome people and very generous, and contribute to our world of ultra running so generously, which I think is awesome. So kudos to all 3 of them. I've known Lawrence and Marianne at Exact Nutrition and Alistair for many, many years. Lawrence for, I don't even know, since he started the company probably. And I worked with him in developing the electro hydration formula. So, it's been my feeling. I've crewed 5 bad waters and ultras all over the world. I ran north to south, as you know, through Death Valley and all the hottest places on the planet. And to me, hydration formulas were under sodiumed. They did not have enough electrolytes in them. And there's too much sugar. And we won't go down that road of nutrition. We could do a whole other podcast just on nutrition and my thoughts on nutrition at the wise old age of 54 right now. I've learned a lot about it over the years. But what our goal with Electro was to find that sweet spot. That was something that you could drink, not get sick, and get the electrolyte mixture that you needed to sustain hard efforts, especially in the heat. That's the story with Electro. But it's the damn protein bars. It's those bars. They're so good. I don't know what he puts in them, but they're amazing. So yeah, we'll give away some today. So you draw 2 names, and then then if you message me their details after, I'll get the stuff sent to them.
Okay, I think what we'll do is that we have. So you said an Exact Nutrition package for a giveaway and a Québécois. So I think we'll give away the Exact Nutrition to the people, the soldiers that are here in the comment section, the people that are watching the live. And since that Facebook Live will become the next episode 140, we'll do the Québécois winner through that the people that will listen to the podcast the next couple of days. So we'll split the possibilities. So, I mean, we got to find questions to ask to the people, and the first person to comment the right answers could get that Exact Nutrition package. Do you have a question?
Yeah. Okay. Let me think about this. What would be my question that I would ask? I want to think of something funny, but now, of course, my brain has gone completely blank.
Hey, we're not live. We have time.
Okay, so let me ask you. Okay, here's the first skill testing question. So when we trekked my buddies and I, when we trekked to the South Pole in 2009, okay, 33 days on the ice. What wildlife did we see?
Interesting. So people go in the comment section right now in the live. If you're listening to that episode on the podcast this week, you can participate. You had to go. You had to be on the live podcast. But we still got a Québec contest for you guys. Since you got the question for exact, I'll get the question. We'll dive into the answers after because people are starting to answer.
Okay.
If you want to get that Québec package, right now the episode will go live on Monday, March 6th. Before March 12th. Let's say March 12th. So you guys have 6 days. You have to answer through Instagram or Facebook the personal messages to Pas Sorti du Bois, whether it's on Instagram or Facebook. We've mentioned many ways to drink coffee today, and Ray mentioned 2 things that are really, really important, that are vital if you want to get good coffee. There's the water temperature, and there's another thing. What is that other thing? And it's an easy question, but all the people that will get the right answer between March 6th and March 12th will pick out one winner. So it's an easy question.
That's great.
But we'll have a lot of participants, and then we'll leave it all to luck to know who wins the Québec package. So Valérie was the first one to ask your question, Ray, and she said none. And then Patricia, and then Patricia asked, also added none. And then Amanda said penguins. So Valérie was the first one to say none.
Patricia, so Valerie wins.
Oh, Valerie wins.
So you guys, that's the correct answer. Nothing. There is nothing. There's no life there. There's nothing there. It's just a big blank white place on the Antarctic plateau.
Valérie, I think you're on Facebook while we're on Facebook Live, so I guess you guys, you're on Facebook. So just go to Pas Sorti du Bois and send me your personal information, your address, and we'll make sure you get your prize.
Is it Valerie Gagné?
Yeah, you know her?
Okay, well, yeah, she just went across the Arctic with me together as my teammate. That's completely
so she had insights. So congrats, Valerie. So I guess it's not a cheat. She knows
it's
your
not
life.
Cheat.
She knew probably the answer, but that's a speed,
we've only spent
test.
I don't know how many days in tents together in Siberia, in the deserts, and now the Arctic. So I'm sure she knows all the stories. She's heard them too many times, so she knows there's no life there. So
she wins an exact package. I think she'll get all the tubes for electrolytes as well as products, the bars. So thanks to Exact. It's cool that they've added a little contest to this, while you mentioned going from a Québec contest. So this is still going on. If you're in the live right now, you know the answer. You've been watching it. You've been listening to it. So you can start right now. So between March 6th and 12th, come back with the right answer, and all the people that will get it right will have a chance to win a Québec coffee package.
That's awesome. And we were talking before about Lawrence and Exact Nutrition and NAC and the Ray Zahab, and it doesn't stop there in Quebec. Our scene in this province is extraordinary. We talk about the races, the characters in our races, like the culture of running in our province is extraordinary. And then you have Cieli, you have Norda, right? And I got to tell you, like Nick and Willa, their contribution to Impossible to Possible, what they do for us with our next youth expedition, they have in a very short order, not only are they creating incredible running shoes, but their generosity, and I can say this because I am on the receiving end of some of that, their generosity is mind-numbing. They're funding these youth. They're one of the title sponsors to go on this expedition to Nunavut so that these kids can have this opportunity to go and do this expedition. So we are surrounded by such great people in our province, and a culture of support that's in this province that I feel is like, it's best in the world.
Yeah.
It's amazing,
And our events that are related to causes, to our, it's crazy. I mean, we've been talking about Crio a lot because it happened 2 weeks ago. Same goes for Bromont Ultra. Same goes for everyone that are doing crazy solo team challenges for a good cause. But as you mentioned it, I mean, we have great companies doing great products for our sport that are going way farther to the boundaries of Quebec. I mean, Exact and NAC are all over the place. Like NAC are all over France, and I know that Exact made some development in the US. Norda, I mean, we see athletes from all over the world wearing these shoes. Same goes for Ciele. I mean, we had photos on Instagram of Anton Krupichka, one of the greatest legend of our sport, with a Ciele cap on. And I think it's just getting started.
I believe that too.
That sport is in full throttle, to take your words that you used before today. That sport, the development of trail running right now in Quebec is crazy. And I mean, we know that it's the tip of the iceberg. The sport will continue to grow. More events will come, but people will start investing time and money into developing products that are made for our trail running scene, our trails. So it's the future is really bright and really exciting for trail running in Quebec.
Yeah, one thing that was always really astonishing to me is when we would have our race, the Midnight Moose especially. So we would get people from the countries, Hong Kong, Germany, the UK, China. They would all come to do the race. And every single person would say to us, we had no idea that this was here and we're in Gatineau Park. And they're like, these trails are incredible. And you hear that all the time. People, the first time, you come around that, you're on the highway between Quebec City and Bay St. Paul, and then you start dropping down, and you just see everything opening up, Charlevoix opening up in front of you, and it just blows people's minds because they have no idea, right? So I think that the sport is it's leading, and it's has so much more to grow. In Quebec. So it's going to be it's exciting times ahead,
Yeah. Before we stopped that Facebook Live, you came on the podcast before. You did the Questions-réponses NAC, the speed questions.
Yeah.
But there's something new that I'm asking my guests right now, because my friend Etienne Dugas, he threw me an idea about making a playlist for trail runner with Pas Sorti du Bois, and I gathered answers from the audience, the people that are listening to the podcast. To all guests are telling me one song to add to the Spotify playlist, which is called the Walkman de Pas Sorti du Bois. And what song do you want to contribute to that playlist?
Is it a running playlist, or is it just like?
Yeah, it's I guess it's for running, because people are sending me like high intensity songs, but there's a lot of things. There's some. Like there's everything that can motivate people, whether it's intense song, or we have a lot of songs there. And today I had a crazy training by my coach, Eric Desroches, was making me doing backyard loops. And I'm just remembering, people, I'm not training for backyard ultra, but Eric loves it so much that my training today, my long run, was in a backyard mood. So making many loops once every hour, 6.7 kilometer. So I pumped up the playlist from Pas Sorti du Bois, and I was like, my last loop was my fastest, so it works. Science proved that it works.
Okay, I'll go with look, I mean, I have like my musical taste span everything from like hard rock to hip hop to 60s to like everything.
Yeah.
But I'm gonna go with the song "Burn" by Deep Purple. That's what I'm gonna go with.
I love it.
Yeah. That, or maybe like, because you really want to get, you
can have two.
By the Almonds. Okay, I can have two?
Yeah, of course.
I'm going to say AC/DC. Which one, though? That's the problem. No, I'm going to stick with that one. I'll go with Burn. Yeah, I'll go with Burn by Deep Purple. You know what one of my favorite running songs is the song "Lazy" by Deep Purple. It's like 13 minutes long. I love these like really long epic songs, and I just get out there and I'm like, oh, I totally forget where I am. It's just like, oh, good, 10K is gone. I'm almost done.
That's the thing about 13 minutes song, is that you can, I mean, it's almost 3 kilometers if you're on the road. So, I mean, it's just one more song till you get home.
Or if you
don't have to know that it's 3 kilometers away from home.
Exactly. You
Yeah.
know? So, or if you're Elliot, you get 5K done in those 13 minutes.
There's that too.
Yeah.
Hey, Ray, it was a great pleasure again to welcome you on the podcast. We did some great Q&A. We had good questions from people in the chat. People a couple of days before the live sent me great questions. So thanks for everyone that showed up. Thanks to everyone that sent questions. And thanks to you, Ray. It was a great fun as always.
Well, thank you so much, brother. And I love being on, and I'll pester you again till I can get back on again. I just love hanging out and chatting, and we're gonna get some miles done together.
That's the thing. Yeah, exactly.
Together,
whether it's miles or kilometers, that's what's missing, because we've been talking a lot. We've been meeting during races and events, but we haven't shared we haven't shared trail running kilometers together. So we need to get that in 2023.
Done. Done deal.
We've said it on the podcast. We've said it on the Facebook Live. Now we don't have any choice. We have to do it.
Got to do it. We'll get it done.
Thanks, Ray. Merci à tout le monde qui a été dans le chat aujourd'hui, qui a été à l'écoute, parce que là, c'est devenu un épisode aussi. J'espère que vous avez apprécié la discussion avec Ray. Questions-réponses, on a vraiment pitché partout. Puis je pense que c'était très intéressant. Ray a une façon de raconter les choses, oui, mais aussi son expérience, de mettre son expérience au profit des auditeurs. Puis je pense qu'on peut tous être inspirés par son parcours. Puis on peut toujours apprendre d'un gars comme ça qui a vécu beaucoup, autant dans les courses que dans les expéditions. Toujours aussi intéressant. Comme d'habitude, je termine en remerciant David Hébert pour le design graphique du podcast, mon ami Frédérick Desroches pour le thème musical, bien sûr NAC, qui est le partenaire principal de Pas sorti du bois depuis les tout débuts, la gang de Capic 1, le coffee partner de Pas sorti du bois depuis almost a year now that Capic has been a partner for Pas sorti du bois, and I thank you for that. I thank François, Elliot also, all the team at Québécois. Merci à vous. Bien sûr, Noctem, qui est le partenaire de bière de podcast. J'avais une catnip aujourd'hui. Je suis allé dans les classiques, la bonne vieille catnip, la meilleure IPA qui se fait sur le marché présentement. Et à tout le monde, je vous dis à bientôt, éventuellement, je ne sais pas quand, pour un prochain épisode de Pas sorti du bois, le podcast 100% trail.